First of all, we are really excited to be here. I think it's good for all the stakeholders that are in the BIM process that you also see how the designers can deal with creativity and can deal with the BIM process. So I'm going to explain you how MVRDV, since the really early stage, we had the BIM dream. So we were already working in softwares, in projects that we were working with data. And well, since MVRDV was founded, MVRDV has been fascinated by the data-driven parametric design. So let's see. This is what we consider like the design can literally be defined by parameters, by data. So with the help of Revit in our case, and with the Dynamo, with the visual programming of Revit, we can define how will be our design without any geometry, any intuition. So we will follow all the constraints that all the stakeholders involved in the process are bringing to us. And for us, I would like to explain what means BIM for MVRDV. And we define it with 4 key words. For us, BIM is data. So then it's a datascape model. All the parties, all the parameters are there. Energy, we can have daylight, sunlight, noise, the footprint, the fart. These are all the constraints that will define our design. For us also, BIM is collaboration. We are really willing to be collaborating with all the users, customers, consultants, clients. So we will define which will be the process of this collaboration. BIM is also for us dynamic. It's a dynamic model. All the elements, all the building elements are intelligently connected, and then any change will be automatically reflected in our model. And then also for us is simulation. How easy is to have a meeting with a client, with all the parties, and really have the clash detection, see how the BIM of the consultant, the structural engineer is clashing with our design, and client can just have a decision in the moment. So this is really a failure cost. And then this is the way we convince client to really solve many issues in a really early stage. So then I will start with some examples of what we consider datascape model for BIM. As I say, MVRDV is fascinated by this datascape. So for us, the design consists of quantifiable parameters. And then, as I said before, it's a data-driven parametric design. What we call it this datascape, the landscape that consists of data. So I will go to one of the projects that I feel is one of the best examples is the MetaCity Data Town from 1919. There we had several parameters we have to take in account. That moment we imagine an unknown city. It was only pure huge data. So we consider 400 by 400 kilometers, and then we take in account all the possible constraints. We start to decide and design which will be the living quarters of the area, which will be the wind energy needed for the city, which will be the agricultural land needed for the area, also the staked forest for the CO2 compensation and the water reservoirs. And then also waste mountains. We gather everything in sectors, and then we have our MetaCity data town, just based, as I said before, in pure and huge data. And then in 2000, we imagine which will be the new scenario for the ecological peer farming. And then, as I said before, we base on data. So in 1999, there were 15.5 million of inhabitants in the Netherlands, and there were 15.6 million of pigs in the Netherlands. So this was the situation at that time. So most of the farming area was in the south of the Netherlands. They were occupying 60,400 kilometers. For an ecological farming, that will be the best scenario. So all the farms will be equally distributed every 1.6 kilometers. So we step back, and then we ask ourselves, how much space is needed for a pig farm? 664 meters. So they need to have all the surveys, all the resources for a really ecological pig farming. Then we consider which will be the needs for the entire Netherlands, and we end up with 31 towers that they will really create a landscape equally distributed in the country. We had our dreams, we were working with data. This is the way that we consider that we were in the BIM process. Another software that we developed was the function mixer. This is just to show you that we wanted to show diversity. We wanted to show light, noise. And then already there we were developing, well, a not fashion software there, but we were having the tools to really show to clients, to the inhabitants, how will be the city if we imagine that we wanted to have more diversity, or if we would take in account which will be the construction cost, which will be the issues about the lighting of the area, or how will be the city if we take in account the noise there. Here, what we had in account was the inhabitants. So we also wanted to have everyone involved in the design. Then here we take in account which will be the typology they wanted to have, the parcel, the communal courtyard, or the position. So then we had people voting for the communal courtyard. They could really choose how will be the size, the position of the parcel. They could really discuss with the neighbors where will be located there. And then we were developing a website where they can really choose which will be the materials of the house. They could be really choosing the size of the parcel, how will be the size of, and the type of the building. And then they could really choose which will be the area, the plot that they will have for the project. And then through the Google Earth, they could really see, after paying a fee, which will be the location of their house. And then it's only not that they decide how will be their house, but they could also have an influence in the neighborhood. These were just some visualizations that people can really just see how will be the new housing. And I wanted to show you, we go one step further. We had our first not so trendy software, but we were for another software or open software here. As I say, I'm showing you which were the parameters here. What we had in account was a different criteria that the user can fix. So they could really say which will be the typology they wanted to have, which will be the view they want to have in their new house, the sunlight, the privacy they are looking for, or which will be the price and the range of the price and the location. So with this new open software, we could show all the possibilities based on that criteria that the user was defining. And then through this scenario, they could also have an overview which will be the cost and the price range. Then we can end up with extreme scenarios where everyone is choosing like a pitched roof that is allocated one on top of each other, or they could be choosing like to have certain sunlight. They could also be choosing different typologies to create the vertical single daylight village. We have here like people that is choosing to have half an hour more of sunlight there. And these are some of the visualizations we made for this future and the vertical village. We believe people can really choose their own house, their own design here. So then I also wanted to show you, because urbanism is also something, it's a challenge for us right now in BIM. We are working on that. But just to show you, it's also based on data. So in this case, in Bordeaux, in France, we were also taking into account different constraints from an area that we had to develop. So here we had all the existing historic structures, and then we inverse it. We keep the ones we wanted to historically have in the project. We cut out through the public transport, and then we extruded the 100 meters that was possible by regulations and the envelope. And then we applied the daylight requirements, the sunlight requirements, and we end up with a master plan with 144 architects involved there that now is in development. So we also apply the requirements of the natural ventilation. But if you say all the constraints are the ones defining our design. So this was the old projects we had at MVRDV. As you see, we had this BIM dream. We wanted to develop softwares where everyone is involved, where the data is manageable for every party. And I also wanted to show you, as I said before, that for us it's also collaboration. And for me, well, it's a process of negotiation. There are many architects that they are fighting against the desires of the different parties of the client. We deal with that in a process of negotiation. And then we really give a value of this real-time collaboration with all the different parties, especially in a global office when you have to deal with companies, consultants that they are based in at really different areas in the world. And then, as I said before, then what we do is to really confront all the different desires of these parties. So for me, one of the best examples is the MVRDV office. This is a company, it's really collaborative one. This is a really international studio. If you if you want to know why it's called MVRDV, it's because of our 3 directors, Winnie Maas, Nathalie de Vries, and Jacob van Rijs. We are based in Rotterdam, Paris, and Shanghai. And then we do since master planning to interior architecture, landscape design, with many projects already built for mixed use, residential, sports, cultural. And as he mentioned before, we have already 850 projects in 36 different countries in the 6 continents. We have flexible working groups. This is a picture of our office. So everyone has a word in the design. So many times I'm explaining the BIM process has all the stakeholders of the project itself, but we also saw all the advantage of having an internal and collaborative BIM model within our office. These are all the meeting rooms we have, and especially when you have a company that do a lot of model options. Since we are working with BIM and we have involved all the parties in early stage, we can take proper decisions. We can really skip many of the options that we show at the beginning of the project. And just to show you, we are just one part of the big group in the BIM process. This was just to show you that we had meetings with all the parties involved there. This is one of the examples that we did not start it with BIM yet in 2008, but we really was an example of collaboration. We had involved that was the concept, that was like a chain of bits there, and then we had here 82 different designs with 25 international architects involved. So it was really about collaboration. Since the beginning of the design and the master plan, all the architects were meeting the consultants and the client since the beginning. These are some of the examples of the architecture office that they were involved, from more modern architectures to more traditional ones. And these are some of the pictures during the meetings with one of our directors, the constructor, client, and some of the consultants. As a result, we have this diversity where we're looking from the beginning, and we were also trying to reduce the cost with all the meetings and the collaboration. So how we got started in BIM? We start to get calls from clients, consultants, contractors, like, are you already in the BIM process? Have you already started? Did you choose any software? So we will look the statistics that time, and then we also look into which were the highest downloads from the websites, from the servers, and we were also working already before with Autodesk, so we choose to move to Autodesk Revit. That's the software that we are using right now. Most of the projects are closed BIM, but we are dealing more often with open BIM in our projects. So at that stage, we had few projects that they had to be developed in Revit, and then we have not many people in the office that had good skills with the software. So that was actually the need that we had in that moment, and we are right now somewhere here. We are training ourselves, we are also having external training, we are getting more and more projects developed in BIM. We also develop our BIM protocol. We are trying to deal, at least in the design phase, to be the BIM managers of the project, to have the control about how the process will be done, who has the responsibility, which are the roles. So we are trying to be more and more involved in the process. This is one of the projects that will be finished in 2022 in Rotterdam. This one I wanted to show you more in detail. This is an art depot for one of the museums in Rotterdam, the Boijmans. Here we try to have this mirror surface that is mirroring the surroundings, but also this curved shape that will reduce the street level footprint. These are some of the views from the upper part. And then here we have to deal with the design team. We had the architecture party, we had the installations, the building physics, the structure, the cost, the security, and we wanted to make this engine work to become a BIM team. So then we established which were the roles. So every party has a BIM coordinator, the architecture team, the structural team, and the installations team. And then we have also inputs from other parties that they were responsible that had been applied correctly into our model. And on top of that, we have the design manager from the design team and the BIM manager that was controlling and establishing the setup of the model. Here is just some of the screenshots of the structural model and the BIM model and the central model. I'm happy to say I'm responsible of the development and implementation of BIM since already like 6-7 years, and I'm happy to say how much directors are supporting, how much managers are supporting that when they see all the information that we can get from a BIM model. Here we have applied all the inputs from all the parties, but they say that every change is automatically changing in the model. They don't need to have all the team reproducing all the elevations, all the sections, all the details are also defined in the model. There is about efficiency here. We have all the schedules, we have much more control. The failure, as I said before, is really reduced. And as I mentioned before, class detections, we move more and more to virtual reality meetings. We had this BIM room where we have all the parties there and we can really go through all the main points and all the main clashes of the project. So this is an overview of all the information that we can get from the central model. And I have to say, we work with many options. We had many desires, many constraints. We wouldn't be able to develop it in the time we did it without BIM here. That's one of the examples, and this is the current stage of the project. It's under construction and will be finished in 2021. And then I wanted to show one of the first projects we had in BIM. It's just to show also in terms of this collaboration. We are from the Netherlands. We are going quite far in BIM, but the Danish, they were a step farther from us. They had already all the regulations. They had many projects already in BIM. So we collaborate with one company in Denmark, and this was one of our pilot projects to really have a completely BIM process. As I showed you before, we split the model in different parts. That time we did not have the platform. We did not have BIM 360. The Revit server was not working. We were really struggling with VPN connection, security, access to our server, so we were exchanging the models here. And I wanted to show you, this was all down, well, a bit of Photoshop with the people, but this is all down in the rendering, in the cloud. All times we were really using it a lot. Now we moved to another softwares that real-time, like Enscape, Unreal, another type of engines, but this time was really efficient for us to use the cloud rendering. Okay, so I talk about data, that is also collaboration for us, and I want to also to explain that it's also about dynamic model. As I said before, everything is intelligently connected. Okay, I have to run. Well, so fast and accurate. We have any automatic change management, building components, I say, intelligently connected, and more space for the design. Well, this is just to show you many people is struggling, like many times came to me, but Maria, I feel more comfortable in another software. I feel more comfortable modeling in Rhino. You can do it, model it in Rhino. We just bring it to Revit later when the design is fixed. We have a really small team, 3 persons working in this project. These are all the comments from the client. We wouldn't manage it that time for the competition without a Revit model there. Well, this is Switzerland, just to show you some images of the project. And then here we have to deal with different typologies, was more how we collaborate between us, how we set up in that project was about the work sets, how people can be working in one part of the project without confronting the work of another colleague. And these are some of the examples of the project there. As I said before, everyone in the office realized how efficient it is. Every change you do is a 3D model. You automatically have changed it in the 3D in the elevation. As I said before, we are trying with urban projects. That will be built for the Floriade. This is like a blanket there. We were already trying to fix a grid here and to try to work with all the parameters of the project. Okay, so simulation. Then here, I saw another room there. We can go for the virtual reality. I showed before, we can also implement BIM. We can go for mock-ups, 3D printing. So we see all the advantages to use BIM as a simulation model. Because nowadays, we are facing with more and more complex buildings, with more complex situations. And this is a way to simulate and assess the design in a really early stage to take proper decisions at the beginning of the project. So as mentioned, we built that. It took 10 years, this project. There were many issues about foundations. We are above the level of water here. That was also really, this is in the city center, in the historical area. But this is like, the interior is the size of a football field. So you have like 40 meters wide. Everything is covered by apartments, but then we host a market inside of the market. This is one paint from one of the, Arno Konen is a Dutch artist here. And the first 2 levels is restaurants, the rest are apartment housings. It's around 240 apartments. So that time we also were working in BIM, and then we also considered it for the structure, for the structure and all the construction was following the BIM model. Now it's in Hong Kong, China. Here I just wanted to show you how, how handy was for us the phasing in Revit, in BIM, because we had to deal with an existing building. Our concept was to really cover everything by glass and show up the existing structure here. This is the current stage, was finalized, it's built already. This was our BIM model, and here, that's the current situation we had to face. And here I just wanted to show how we deal with this current existing and the new. So it was easier for us to really differentiate which were the parts that we couldn't take it or couldn't change at what we had to take in account for the design. And when I say to assess, many times when you deal with public buildings, you have to have all the future customers and the inhabitants really involved at the beginning of the process. So for us, the BIM process was helping in a lot. This is a heritage area, Zandstam in the Netherlands. So we were looking for a complex and exciting building, and where we have different parties also involved. We have the structural engineers, acoustic, thermal, fire, stagecraft, the facade, the MIP. And then we had to explain this complex building to the inhabitants, the client, and the different parties. So that was amazing how easily it was to show in Revit all the different parties, all the different sections of the building, how to explain the program, how to go through all the levels of the program. And I will skip that, but I have some links to show like the renders here, but let's go for the last project. So this is the valley. This is a mixed office in the Netherlands, is under construction. Here, what we have to face is an urban facade and also housing. It was a mix. There's a lot of diversity in the terraces. We have to find a way to define which will be the parameters, the constraints that will define the design. This is a top view. And then for us, our principles were how will be the facade to define it according to the sunlight, to the daylight, to the different terraces, and also the cost. So then we have a workflow from Rhino to Grasshopper. So in Grasshopper, in collaboration with Arup, we were defining which will be the different constraints, how will be the final design according to them. So then we take in account the program, or we could also slide to say how much sun hours we'll have the facade here. And then I just wanted to show you at the end, we end up with, we end up with many different scenarios. I don't know if I have to play. Well, this is a movie that is just going through all the different options that we got with the different studies and help us to choose the one that all the parties were agreeing there. So we moved from the concept design, we started with Rhino and Grasshopper, and from the schematic design to the constructions drawings, we moved to Revit with the help of Dynamo. And we were defining many of the parameters and constraints with the two softwares there. So this is how was the project in the sketch design and how end up in the final competition. And this is the current stage of the construction. It's around 70,000 square meters. So, well, a summary, as I say, well, it's about data, it's about collaboration, simulation, and it's also about dynamics. So here is just the summary of all the different topics and keys that I mentioned to you. And well, thank you very much. I hope it inspired you. Yeah.